and a warm welcome to the AI Talk Show. I'm Asha Saxena, founder and CEO of WLDA, World Leaders in Data and AI. And we're thrilled to have you all here, as I know this is truly a global community today. And I think that's the fun part of being on LinkedIn, as we have all these, the tech, the business leaders come together from all around the world. And for those new to WLDA, we are a global leadership community with a specific and ambitious mission to advance responsible, human-centered AI. We focus on bringing senior leaders together to collaborate, learn, and ultimately shape the future of data and AI. And I truly believe that our core value of community growth and impact is what is at the center of WLDA. Today, we're diving into a frontier that is rapidly moving from science fiction to operational reality. And a really favorite topic of mine, I think when me and Sandy were talking about it, I got excited because it's really about physical AI. I talk a lot about AI in general, of how AI can be implemented in our organization, but intelligent robots that are beginning to interact directly in our physical world is very, very interesting place to be in. Think about it, in a sector from logistics and healthcare, we've been hearing about robots. They're not just pilots, but they're in production. In several major hospital systems, I've seen it myself, where autonomous delivery robots, like Moxie robot, and that's Moxie is built by Diligent Robotics, and it's become seamlessly integrated into nurses. That nurses are having fun with it. They're naming them, they're decorating them with stickers, and they sometimes say that they're part of their team. And we're redefining the entire conversation around leadership, organizational readiness, and most importantly, trust. And I think this conversation has been kind of coming up over and over again as we think about AI in all parts of our life. McKinsey's been doing some really interesting studies, and they've done a study on physical AI, and they say that it is going to generate staggering 1.7 to 4 trillion in economic value over next decade. And so this becomes a really important topic for us to discuss. And there's some critical insights. The real lasting competitive differentiation, it won't come from just the machine. It'll come from how we integrate these products in operations or cloud infrastructure or governance. So the human element becomes really, really important. And truly, no better person than Sandy Carter to be able to have this discussion with me. And Sandy, I'm so excited for you to be here to talk about the physical AI. And we all talk about AI in general in our organization, and we're excited about the generative AI. But physical AI, I think, is the next frontier, and is actually has made some really good impact. But before we get started, I want to welcome you and would love to hear a little bit about your. I feel like LinkedIn community already knows you, but maybe a quick introduction, and we'll jump right into this topic.
Super. Thank you, Asha. Great factoids right there at the very beginning. As Asha said, my name is Sandy Carter. I'm the Chief Business Officer at Unstoppable. We work primarily in blockchain, and we use a lot of AI. I'm also the chair of the Applied AI group at the TDE, or the Digital Economist. I've just completed writing a white paper. I thought it was going to be 10 pages. It turned out to be almost 30 pages on physical AI, because I do believe that physical AI is going to be the next frontier. I spent quite a bit of time with some of the robotics experts and the humanoid experts. And it's just so fascinating to now see physical AI being embodied right in front of us. And so it's really got me excited. I'm excited for this topic. I previously have worked at IBM and Amazon. Amazon uses robots a lot in their warehouses and what they're leveraging, as does IBM in production of what they're doing as well on the hardware side. And so I think a lot of the startup work I've done, as well as the large enterprise work I've done, really plays into some of the expertise that I have here in physical AI as well.
That's great. And, when you talk about this robotics, it's generally, we think about it as abstract or futuristic, but the impact is already measurable now. I love the example you gave, but in logistics, as you said, in Amazon, they've been deployed, in real time right now. There's also AI-enabled pallet moving robots, that just didn't move inventory, but actually they can predict and learn the human foot traffic patterns. And I think these robots are truly creating some impact in retail. Self-scanning robots are driving up inventory accuracy, and they say about 25% of accuracy. And I love that you're measuring the impact in these systems or these robots. And I think that's what the question always comes. You implement these solutions, can you see and measure the impact? So truly, these are not futuristic concepts; they're operational facts now. And with your background, Sandy, and with the paper, I would love to hear what you wrote in the paper. But talk to me a little bit about where do you see physical AI fundamentally transforming business models or redefining competitive advantage, and maybe reshaping how human workforce really react. And what is the biggest strategic misstep leaders are making when they're thinking about this shift?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I think about it this way. In the past, we had machines that did exactly what we programmed, right? That's where I started. When I started programming, I would say, do this, and the machine would do that. And now, today, with generative AI, we have machines that kind of learn and adapt alongside of us. So think about many of the agents, like at Unstoppable, we have an agent that does support for us. I have a friend at a large pharmaceutical company, and she's got AI agents that do marketing, market research, analyzing her landing pages. So that's kind of where we are right now. In the future, and I think the future in some cases is already here, AI will be embodied in a physical mechanism and will be living and working among us. And I don't think, to be honest, that it has to be precisely in the enterprise. So, for example, one of the areas that I'm really excited about are some of the specialist robots. There's generalist robots, like what you see like with Amazon, where they're generally doing packing and shipping. And then there's very specialist robots that I think could help us directly. In fact, to our earlier conversation about preparing a meal, here in Silicon Valley, I was just with a company called Eat with Pasha. And the founder has this really cool robot. It's, if you think about the problem he's trying to solve, it's, could a robot help you in the home? Because who wants to spend hours cooking and, doing all of the tasks that you have to do to get your family good, healthy food? Well, if you think about it, that particular specialized robot that helps you cook is improving your life. It's saving your money. It's saving you time. And I think that this could be maybe one of the starts of the future of where we're headed with AI, right? So if you think about you have like my husband and I, we both work. We're trying to, do great at our careers. And now we have to come home from work and we have to cook. Sometimes we order DoorDash or we go out to eat, and it costs a lot of money. And you probably don't get really healthy food. So this little robot cooks your meals for you. And does it for like $20. So is that a really game-changing robot? I would say yes. I think it's just as game-changing as the robot that I see in my old company, Amazon, where they're using it to, lift heavy packages. I was just looking at Elon Musk saying that in one of his car factories, he now has robots that take things really high and uses the storage that's up in the roof because a robot can do that. So I do see this big change coming. And I do see it in kind of three ways. One, robots are now could become more as a generalist, a colleague. They'll live in our homes. They'll sit in the boardroom. I was just talking to a company that has a robot that sits in the boardroom, takes minutes, et cetera, real time. They'll work beside us, right? Like they do in the factories today. Which means, and you kind of kicked it off at the very beginning, this is going to require new privacy protections and new safety standards, right? So you have a child in your home. Let's say your robot is there just to clean, but inadvertently there will be children.
Yeah.
And so if they record a child playing, or, maybe the child doesn't have its shirt on, it's running around in its diaper. What happens with that data? Where does the data get stored? How do they use the data? Can someone hack in and grab the data? I think there'll be new privacy protections, new safety standards. Think about the robot in the boardroom. Let's say that you're talking about a potential acquisition. I mean, you don't want somebody being able to share that or being able to use that. So where does that data go? So I think we've got a lot of interesting things there we have to ferret out. And the second thing is that specialist versus generalist, right? I do see maybe starting out the beginning, we'll have a lot of specialist robots, like the little robot that cooks your meal or that cleans your house, things that I both want for me. I think companies will choose between a task-focused robot, maybe a surgical assistant that just does one surgery, and a general purpose humanoid that can adapt to motion, multiple tasks that you have going on. And then finally, I think one of the big changes is work role flips. So for example, maybe humans move from doing manual tasks to becoming a humanoid or a robot supervisor, right? So I'm supervising a team of robots, or a team of creative problem solvers. And then machines will handle the physical work and we'll handle some of that creative work, which is a little different than what we're seeing today. So that's kind of three biggies that I see happening.
Really interesting, because I line up seeing a robot in a healthcare setting where the robot was actually talking to the elderly population. So, the whole gap of elderly population feeling lonely. And the robot goes up for rehab and asks this lady to get up and work out. And she just rolls her eyes and turns her face. And then he looks at her again and says, come on, just because I'm a robot, you're not going to work out with me. And then she looks at him and then she says, listen, I've got the best jokes. And so he just gets her laughing, and then they're working out. And I thought that was so interesting, because these robots can actually, yes, they can do our mundane task of cleaning and cooking, but how great would it be to have these robots engage with a population that needs rehab or, healthcare, remind us with our, when to take medications and so on. So I think there's a lot of great use cases that can come up or are already out there, which are helping us in health or, operational efficiencies and logistics. So
And I think, Asha, as you think about that, I think the interesting thing about your example about helping the elderly, which I think is amazing.
Yeah.
I was at CES last year, and I actually got to experience one of those robots, like talking to me for the loneliness epidemic. I thought it was like the best thing around. But those robots actually have a different learning pattern than an LLM. They actually watch and they imitate. And so I was talking to one of the founders, and he said, if you go into a home and the home is a beautiful environment and wonderful, the robot will imitate how you take care of your mother. But let's say you have a home where maybe it's not so great, right? Maybe there's abuse, or maybe there is just not such caring. There's a couple of studies out right now where they show that robots will imitate that behavior, which again goes back to that issue that I had. I think, we have a lot of data and privacy and safety today in AI, but when you come to physical, I think the stakes get really high, really fast. And I think it's just something we need to think about as we move forward.
I love that you brought that up. I did that TEDx where I talked about upgrading as a human. This is a human upgrade. And I talk about why it is so critical that we engage with AI and we as humans show how we show up. What is our values, because we are coding our values in these systems. And if we don't take ownership of how we show up, we can't blame the technology, because if you want the good comes out. It's garbage in, garbage out. So how you treat these programs, and I think that's why there's so much conversation, and that's why the whole WLDA was started. The reason WLDA was started was that how do we create a fair digital world? And I love that you said that. Imagine that if they're watching us, they're listening to us. The whole example of Tay, the Microsoft launched that teenage conversationalist at Twitter when it was called Twitter. And when Tay listened to the conversation around on Twitter about the hate during the election year in 2016, she became bitter, and she started talking about creating wall in Mexico and and so on. And they had to bring it down because it was listening. And I think you hit it on the nail, is that how we show up and how we train these models is very, very critical, and how we give the reinforcement.
Yeah. And I think that this, have a lot of questions from a lot of young people about what are next careers.
Yeah.
I'm an adjunct professor at Carnegie Mellon. I think this is going to be one of the next careers, is being a robot trainer or a humanoid trainer, where you're not just training on knowledge, but also on attitude and approach. These other things that are very human. I think we're going to have robot trainers. That will be a big career, because as you said, it's so critical. And the way that you train the robot will be a lot of the success, right? I mean, I just saw one of these dogs being advertised for kids for Christmas. It's super cute, right? It talks back to you. It learns your habits and everything. Well, I think a lot of the success of that little dog robot is not going to be just, how many sales they have, but it's also going to be, anybody hack into the data? Did the dog try to bite someone? I mean, the whole behavioral piece, not just the knowledge piece. And so I think with these robots, we got to think bigger and broader about safety, privacy, and data as well.
I want to come back to privacy, but before I do that, I want to talk about readiness. I think it is such an exciting time, because everybody's talking about jumping right in and implementing AI. And I think a lot of businesses excited about seeing results. They say, oh, use AI, we're going to be more productive, more effective. But there's truly a readiness gap. When you think about implementing robotics or AI or physical AI or Gen AI, or any form of AI. When we think about implementing, the struggle becomes when the data streams are not integrated, when the operational processes are not consistent. When the leadership teams don't have clarity, or alignment or ownership issue becomes a huge issue, or the workflow challenges. And I think we can look at studies after studies, right? Where they'll say that there are failed deployments because of organizational and readiness issues. You work with massive successful ecosystems. What is your perspective on foundational or non-negotiable elements across data, infrastructure, cloud strategy, governance, or organizational skills that has to be in place when organizations are considering deploying physical AI at scale?
Yeah, I think it goes back there. We did a survey with about 1,500 companies, and I think it goes back to the same things that make AI successful is going to make physical AI successful. So I think the first one is starting small. Don't try to automate your entire factory at one time. Try to take something that is small, that's repeatable, that you can use to measure clear improvements in your speed and your safety and your quality, starting small with what you're doing. And I think this even becomes before it gets into an enterprise. Asha was just with a company out in Silicon Valley, and they're testing a humanoid that comes to your house and delivers a pizza. But it doesn't just come and deliver pizza and take the payment. It actually goes into your house. It serves the pizza.
Wow.
So it has plates, it serves the pizza, it pours the drinks, and then it waits. And at the end, it takes the plates up, it goes and washes the plates, cleans everything up. So really, it's like a full service pizza delivery.
Oh my God.
And I love the approach that he's taking on it, because it's not like he's like, okay, it works, let's just go. He's actually doing beta tests. So in fact, in some of the learnings in his beta tests, he found that in Silicon Valley, some of the doorways aren't large enough for his humanoid base. So, because, the robot's pretty big and it's got to have a strong, solid base, because he doesn't want it tipping over on a child or a dog or even, someone who's elderly. So they figured out that, oh, wow, there's a size issue here we've got to deal with. And as he was thinking about it, he was also thinking about implications for other enterprises. So like Pepsi and Coke now, given that the humanoid is pouring the drink, who selects the drink? Is it the robot now? Is it his company that gets to select Coke or Pepsi? So now Coke or Pepsi are marketing to him versus the person. So I love the fact that he's testing it out. And as he's testing it, He's figuring out all these interesting questions that go around it, architecture, purchasing, safety. I mean, all of these things that are coming out, which I think is really important. The second thing that I've seen is, it's so funny because people don't think about this, but your Wi-Fi and your power system matter as much as the humanoid or the robot that you bring in. I can't tell you when I was writing this paper how many deployments failed because the companies ignored their building infrastructure. Can it actually support these smart machines? In several cases, the Wi-Fi did not stay up, or the power, they didn't have enough power for all these robots running around. And so, it's just something you really have to think about because it is a physical manifestation. How do you make sure that you've got everything that you need in the factory in that space? And then the third one, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's an interesting point. And that's why the whole data center boom, because where's the power going to come from?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I like to say we're not having right now a GPU versus CPU bubble or an AI bubble. We're really having a power bubble.
Yes.
Because energy and electricity is becoming so much more of a game changer. So everybody's trying to figure that out. And the third, readiness. So in addition to kind of starting small, learning, adjusting, and then making sure your infrastructure is ready, I think the third one is making sure that you include your teams from day one. I think people forget that this is just another transformation project. And Asha, you and I know that change management is equally as important as the technology.
Yeah.
If you don't explain to people and get your workers' inputs, get your employees' inputs, people will know what their job is, what the robot job is. How can that prevent expensive mistakes and reduce fear? That change management has to be at the top of the list. In fact, if you go through the McKinsey report, the MIT report, and you look for commonality as to what made the project successful, they spent a lot of time on what made them unsuccessful. Right. But in every case that they were successful, the company paid attention to change management. And I know many of these are ones you write in your book, the AI factor too, right? Making sure that you're looking at things, starting small, growing, making sure you're looking at your data and your infrastructure, making sure you're doing change management. I think all of these things are critical. And when you're looking at humanoids and robots as well.
Great points on all the different challenges. I mean, we spoke earlier on all the great things it can do, and look, all that is available, but the challenges are real. And I tell you, so I advise CXOs, and I run the AI steering committee for organizations. And what I see the most, Sandy, when I'm working with the clients is that the biggest struggle is innovation versus governance or compliance. One of the organizations I'm working with, they bought all these licenses, and then legal came and said, wait a minute, you can't deploy it. What's going to happen to all the information that will get uploaded? And so we'll have the firewall. No, but it also depends what questions they're asking, because if they ask the question and they don't do anything about it, that would be a problem too. So there's so many guardrails. There's trust issue, there is guardrails, there's compliance and risk associated with AI that you really truly have to think about how you resolve it. How do you create that balance between innovation and governance? How do you create that balance? Because you can't innovate and not worry about the risk, and you can't worry about the risk and not innovate. So you get into this whole, how do I trust this AI? And I love what you spoke about, is that they're listening to you, they're going to act. So where does confidentiality sits? So how do you distinguish when organizations are trying to scale responsibly, build deep employee buy-in, because the employees are worried now that, oh my God, how would this information impact me? And you're struggling with the resistance that can stall adoption. How do you navigate? How do you really figure out how you create this balance?
I think this is the major question. And I think if you're looking today at, Japan, they're trying to balance between speed. They have an urgent need for elder care, as you brought up earlier.
Yeah.
But they're trying to balance between, this is a government, the government. How do you balance between speed of providing assistance where you have a major gap now and innovation? How do you look at both? I think that it's really important that people understand that there is ROI and responsible ROI. It doesn't, they're not separate. You don't have to pick ROI or innovation, ROI or speed. You can do both at the same time if you're looking and driving at this in the right way. So I actually created for this paper what I call kind of the flywheel, coming off of my dear friends at AWS, that we always do this flywheel. But I looked at one for physical based on all these companies that I've been looking at. And it's really, if you can take a look at the function that you need, the infrastructure that you require, and on equal grounds, the safety that you require, as well as privacy of data, and then how you're going to integrate it into what you currently have, then you really have this trust piece that comes along with it. That framework, I think, enables people to see, I don't need to pick one. I've got to really do all 5 of these in the right way in order to be successful. I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's both. And creating that governance framework for me is equally as important as creating the technical framework. I'll tell you, I was working with a company that is based in Malaysia, and they were going to do kind of the first step to humanoids. They had this mood jacket, and they were going to roll it out. They spent 9 months creating this mood jacket with sensors and IoT and automation. And they spent 1 week on training their teams, listening to their challenges, thinking about privacy of data. Like, okay, we're saying it's anonymous, but is it really anonymous? Yeah. And they failed in their implementation. And when I talked to the gentleman who rolled it out, he said, we had this great idea, but we spent 95% of our time on the tech and only this much time on the governance and the people and the change management. And had we done it opposite, it would have made all the difference in success, all the difference in the world.
That's true. And you know what? When I think about all the examples we've discussed here, I think there is no doubt that we can say that implementing the technology effectively can boost your productivity. The recent MIT study, which I recently came across, said about 85% productivity, up to 85% productivity. So when we're thinking about productivity boost, I think the most important thing becomes is the leadership communicating the purpose or aligning the incentives with the workforce. What are they doing to invest proactively in developing the human skills? It's all about alignment. I keep saying it's alignment to make sure that your business goals, your technology goals, your governance goals, we're trying to make sure that there's no friction and confusion when we think about implementing these kind of technologies. So it's about the leadership mindset. So how would you define the leadership mindset for business or technology or legal and compliance? What is the leadership mindset the organization need to implement this human and robotic integration for organizational success?
Wow, I think there's more than 3 there. Let me see if I can think about what I would say. I would say, first of all, the mindset has to be, I'm going to build safety and privacy into a competitive advantage. There are many examples where companies have really gotten a competitive advantage by leveraging, safety records, transparency of data. And I think actually this Christmas, we're going to see companies who are looking at privacy of data. I think they're going to win. They're going to move much faster through that success cycle if they build safety and privacy as a competitive advantage. I also think that the mindset has to be around the data and, being part of world leaders of data and AI analytics. I think it's really important that the mindset has to be everything in this world today is driven by the data. So we need to figure out how we make sure that the data is right, is clean, is high quality. I think we also need to decide right up front for data what robots can record, where is the data stored, who has access to the data. Because I think in the robotic situation, once the systems are watching and they're listening to us, I think changing the privacy rules later will be much, much harder. I think the mindset also needs to be start small, get measurable wins. I think we talked about that earlier, but I do think that that's a mindset. Like I see a lot of people who always just want to go big, big, big versus let's start small, let's get a success, and then let's roll out. It's one of the things I learned from Amazon. You know, people are like, oh, wow, they always go big. But before we went big on anything, we tested it. We tested it in a market, in a city, in a industry. We never just went and rolled everything out. So we started small. Our mindset was, you know, start small, listen to the customer, be customer obsessed, and then grow. And then I think the last mindset is, I would say, employee obsession. Design with your workers in mind. Don't design around them, design with them. Let them help you select the robot, the humanoid, the specialized tool that you need, because they know what actually works. And I think that can prevent companies from making, you know, really big mistakes. And then the last thing I would say for mindset is, you know, I think those who are thinking ahead are going to win. Like let's think back to that example I gave you of the Silicon Valley, who's testing out this humanoid that's delivering pizzas. I mean, he's already thinking about architectures and how homes might change. So when I was there after my meeting, he had a whole group of architects in Silicon Valley coming to look at the humanoid and the robot. And he let me stay for a few minutes. And it was amazing because these architects who are designing homes throughout California, he made them aware of perhaps we'll need wider doorways, perhaps we'll need bigger hallways, because you may have pretty soon, everybody's going to have a humanoid or a robot in the home, maybe multiples. Right. I just think that that is, you know, and it's not today, it's not this instant, but I think those people who have a mindset of, let me think about the future, I'll design for the day, but let me think what's coming and make those decisions.
Do that. Are
we still recording?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
We're having such an amazing conversation, Sandy, and you are traveling around the globe. Tell me about the most interesting, unique robotic application you've seen that would be fun for our audience to actually hear from you about.
Well, one of my most interesting ones was a company called Sonic, and what they've developed, actually, I have to give a lot of credit, not a lot, the only credit to the founder and CEO, Adil. And what he's done is he's worked on the hardest part of a robot or a humanoid, which is the hand. So the way the hand moves is very, very, very hard to imitate. And he's actually focused explicitly on the hand. So I'd like to just show you, just using, you know, what the camera that we're on today. If you look at my hand actually moves the robotic hand. This is a deal as well. So, you know, Asha, one of the things we've been talking about is humanoids, but we haven't really talked about the function. And if you think about it, the hand is one of the hardest things to do. In fact, the way you manipulate the hand is harder than the whole robot or whole humanoid itself. So I have the amazing Dr. Adil on. He's going to talk to us about why is the hand the hardest part of the robot.
Thanks, Sandy. And so my company, Psionic, we've been developing bionic hands for the last 10 years now. And the human hand is just so complex. There's 23 different movements that you can do with it. And just to replicate all of that is just incredibly hard. That's why, as Sandy was mentioning, it's been harder to build hands than the rest of the humanoid body itself. And what really makes us unique is that because we've made this hand for both humans and robots, we can actually train our robots by using our human users to get the information from how they're doing all these different tasks from the home, like folding laundry or washing dishes to things like even building entire cars and assembling them as well. And to kind of give you an illustration of like what that human to robot translation looks like, Sandy, we're going to do something fun. You're going to actually get to control this hand here.
Ooh,
And
cool.
so if you put your hand up to the camera.
And by the way, we're not in the same location. He's in San Diego. I'm in Arizona, right?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, let's see
Exactly.
it.
All right, so just put your hand up to the camera. Yep, and we got it right there. And then if you bend your fingers,
How
you're
cool
actually
is that?
controlling this.
From state to state, man. So thank you. And I think that you now get the point.
Nice.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I think that that's so important. It's so interesting that his company as well has focused on enterprise. So like their hands are used in the Amazon warehouses, but his real heart and his real mission is giving these hands to people who were born without an arm. And he can have this hand to where they can actually feel and experience everything we do with a hand. So he actually tells me he uses his enterprise customers to fund what he really loves to do, which is to give back to others with
that
his hand.
story.
And it's so cool that he's chosen to focus explicitly on the hand because it is so hard.
That's really interesting story. Thank you for sharing that. Okay.
Okay.
I love that you said you have to keep people in mind when you think about designing. And I think it's employees and customers and all stakeholders. I love that example of the whole process from delivering pizza to serving you and to washing dishes. He thought about the entire workflow, thinking about being futuristic and thinking about how the homes would be. So I agree with you. I think we are in this age where we all need to be inquisitive. We need to be lifelong learners. We need to think ahead. Things are moving so fast. I mean, I cannot believe, like, can you imagine all these, every day there's a new launch. By the time I grab, hang of this technology, next one is popping up. It's just so fast. So you need to be ready to evolve with this technology, with this day and age, and do it responsibly, as you said. It's so important that, yes, the technology is here, but are we doing it responsibly? Are we showing up, doing the right things? And are we communicating the mission and vision? Are we have the right mindset to be able to show up and actually deliver? Sunny, every single time I talk to you, I feel like I'm learning, and I love having these conversations with you. You're always thinking ahead of time. So thank you for taking time out to come on the LinkedIn Live to talk to the LinkedIn audience. I feel like a lot of us land up learning and spending time on LinkedIn to see what's going on in our community. So I really appreciate you coming today and having this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. And thanks for everybody who's listening, because this is the future. And I'm so excited that all of you guys in the world leaders of data and AI are thinking about ahead, what's happening ahead, so that we're all ready for it. So thanks for inspiring us in that way, Asha.
I agree with you. And I think it's not just a technological evolution. It's more than that. It's leadership evolution. And that's why I think I like what we do at WLDA, is that we bring the data, digital, AI, tech leaders together, but we also talk about not just technology, but leadership. How do you show up as leaders? I think the organization that will succeed in capturing this multi-trillion-dollar opportunity are the people who are going to think about aligning the cross-functional leadership, not just about the product, but cloud, operations, business, technology. Building trust is really, really critical. And I work with a lot of technology leaders, and I constantly talk about how important it is that we build trust through radical transparency. It's robots or AI, really thinking about what is the logic in decision making, how we are showing up and how we are building these models is really important. And then governance, we cannot forget about governance and readiness before deployment. You need to make sure that we involve the right people to make sure the governance is tight. And then workforce, we talk about workforce constantly, and I love that Sandy brought that up. It is about bringing the workforce along, not doing it in a silo, and innovate with responsible and strategic clarity, which is really critical. And to everybody who's here, I love that you send us questions, give us direction. it is important that we talk about the important topic. Having speakers like Sandy and other thought leaders come on the show to talk about what does it mean to be a leader in today's day and age, and what are the important conversation we need to have. And that's what we do at Wilder. That's what we try to bring to the LinkedIn community. Thank you, everyone around the world who are joining. It's a global community, so I love having the global community here. We look forward to seeing you the next time at the AI Talk Show. Thank you so much.